I hope this custody ruling teaches you how to let go. That's what her ex-husband whispered the moment Mara Langley lost her children in court. 3 days later, she was holding a silver dollar in a parking lot, a cryptic message from a dead man burning in her pocket, and a trail leading to a hidden place no one wanted her to find. She wasn't supposed to survive this, but she was never one to follow the script. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. The room smelled like dry wood and old paper-polished cherry panels on the walls, leather-bound books behind glass, a grandfather clock ticking out of rhythm. Winthrop and Castor had been her grandfather's law firm for 4 decades. Mara Langley sat 2 seats from the end of a long walnut table, hands folded tight, the edge of her thumbnail red, where she chewed it too far. Across from her, Uncle Malcolm leaned back with theatrical ease, silver cufflinks glinting as he adjusted his jacket. To his left, Aunt Corinne whispered something into her daughter's ear and chuckled behind a manicured hand. None of them made eye contact. Silas Trent, the executor, cleared his throat and slid on his glasses. This is the last will and testament of Elias Raymond Langley. Pages turned, words rolled past her in a soft, neutral tone. Trusts, property, equities, distributions. And then, to my granddaughter Mara Langley, I leave $1. There was a pause, then a rustle of shoulders, a suppressed laugh. Aunt Corinne didn't bother to hide hers. Mara didn't blink. Silas reached under the table and pulled out a velvet box. He placed it in front of her. She opened it slowly, feeling every second stretch thin. Inside was a silver coin, $1. The kind you find in a collector's case, with the year etched in a serifed font and her grandfather's initials engraved on the rim, ERL. Mr. Langley said this was to be delivered in person, Silas added. No one spoke. Even she stayed silent. She snapped the box shut and tucked it into her coat pocket as though it were only a crumpled napkin. Her knuckles blanched. Her car sat wedged between a Lexus and a BMW, both gleaming, both untouched by wear. The old Civic beside them rattled whenever the gears shifted. Tears didn't come until the stairwell of her building, 3rd floor paint, curling near the mailboxes. The climb was hushed, only a faint cartoon soundtrack leaking from another unit's door. Inside, the heater sputtered weakly. She placed the box on the counter, let the bag slide from her shoulder. One narrow bed, a fold-out couch, a laminate table with a shaky leg. The air carried the sting of bleach and canned broth. A cup with 2 toothbrushes sat by the sink. School books waited on the couch where the kids had left them. She left them there. A letter rested on the table. The seal was unmistakable, Family Court of Buncombe County. She tore it open with the edge of a butter knife. Notice of preliminary hearing, custody determination. Date 3 days from now. She pressed both palms to the counter and leaned in. Her shoulders curled in like she could disappear between them. There was no time, no savings, no lawyer who'd return her calls. Just her and a coin. Her phone buzzed once. She let it ring twice before picking up. Text from Silas Trent. 1 line. The coin is not the whole inheritance. The gavel struck wood sharp and final, the sound ricocheting through the beige courtroom. Fluorescent lights hummed above, flattening every face into gray. Mara sat straight, palms pressed to her skirt, the edge of the bench, digging into the backs of her knees. Across the aisle, Clay straightened his tie, aligning the folder in front of him, as though precision could win the case. His lawyer's cadence droned on stable housing, steady paycheck, dependable parental presence. They dressed the word predictable like it was a badge of honor. She recognized the script. They had rehearsed it during the divorce. Her own counsel, well-meaning but overburdened, tried to counter with small truths. Mara's double shifts her parenting classes, how the children flourished under her care, despite the rising rent. The judge leafed through the papers, face blank, until he spoke. Given the current housing conditions and financial stability of the parties, I'm granting primary custody to Mr. Langley. Ms. Langley will retain visitation rights on alternating weekends until reassessment. The gavel cracked. Clay's lips twitched, not quite a smile enough to knot her stomach. As they exited, their footsteps echoing off the hallway walls, he leaned in and whispered, "Maybe this'll teach you how to let go." He kept walking. He always did. That night, silence pressed heavier than usual. The girls were already at Clay's. Her son's backpack had left a faint hollow in the couch cushion. Cereal bowls lingered on the table untouched. A lone lamp bled weak light into the room. She reheated soup swallowed without tasting and braced her palms on the counter, fingertips grazing unopened mail, her thoughts circling the word visitation. In the bedroom, one bare mattress waited for Calla and Thane. Mara claimed the pullout, its metal springs groaning each time she turned. She ignored them. The sitcom on TV chattered too brightly, laughter canned and false. She killed the sound with the remote. The following evening, the diner reeked of fryer grease and overcooked toast. A country ballad drifted faintly from the radio while Mara topped off a ketchup bottle behind the counter. Headlights slid across the front window. She didn't need to look, she already knew the figure walking in. Silas Trent coat loose at his sides past the register and tipped his chin toward the back. She untied her apron only halfway and followed him into the parking lot. The air carried a chill. Cigarette butts dotted the curb. Somewhere nearby, a delivery truck growled through the night. Silas handed her a manila folder sealed with a brass clip. "You need to come with me tomorrow." Early, she blinked. "What is this A direction?" "A start." "You think I have time for riddles?" Her voice was thin, worn down from 2 straight shifts. He didn't waver. "You asked why Elias left you a coin and nothing else. This folder is part of that answer. But it only matters once you're standing where he meant you to be." Her eyes narrowed. What place? He reached into his coat and drew out a thinner envelope sealed with wax and marked only with the initials ERL. "You open it there, not before." That was his rule. A flash lit the horizon, silent but unmistakable. Silas edged back, hand already on the car door. "The inheritance isn't cash, Mara. It's a choice. And he left it for the version of you who knows what it costs." He slid inside, headlights spilling across her as the engine rumbled to life. Mara lingered, one arm braced on the car roof, the other hugging her ribs. The silver dollar pressed against her hip with a weight that felt heavier than metal. She drew it out, turning it slowly until the engraved initials caught a sliver of light. On the rim, nearly invisible, 2 faint letters emerged. HH. Gravel scattered as her Civic pulled onto the narrow road beams, carving a pale tunnel through fog. The climb wound higher, curved sharp pines pressing close. Moss streaked by on wet stone. Arms crossed, chin tilted toward the window, she let her breath miss the glass. Silas kept the wheel steady, silent, which suited her fine. "This doesn't feel legal," she muttered. He tightened his grip. "Private land. So's Area 51. A flicker of a smile touched his mouth. "With fewer aliens, I promise." She gave a restless sigh. "I don't need a retreat or a commune. I need a lawyer. I need custody. I need a second job that won't grind me down. You'll find more than you expect up here." "I'm not searching for meaning, Silas. I just want a way out." The trees finally thinned, and a gate appeared, wrought iron. 2 wide panels, its center marked by a smooth metal disc, gleaming like something both futuristic and ancient. Silas rolled down his window, slid the coin into a narrow slot, and a muted click echoed from inside. The disc rotated, then stilled. The gate swung open soundlessly. Sunlight spilled across the hood as they entered the valley, rolling green, framed by oak and hemlock, a stream winding through the center. Small cedar houses with tin roofs peeked between the trees, spaced with intent. Farther off, a turbine turned lazily against the sky. She sat forward, arms unfolding, without her noticing. He turned the car toward the largest building, a wide 2-story structure with wraparound porches and a pitched roof. The wood looked weathered but solid. A few people sat on the porch, one knitting, another reading. No one stared. Silas parked and stepped out. Mara hesitated, fingers drumming her knee. "This is Haven," he said, circling to her door. "Hawthorne Haven. Your grandfather's legacy in full." She slid out, boots crunching on gravel. The air smelled of cedar and earth, cool but not cold. A woman descended the porch steps, sleeves rolled to her elbows, dark braids tied at her nape. She extended a hand. "June Delacroix, Health and Community Coordinator." Mara shook it, startled by how firm it was. "Lyle Harrow," said a voice from behind. A tall man approached from the side of the building, grease-smudged gloves in one hand, a screwdriver in the other. "I run the power systems. Solar, hydro, the works. We do our best to keep things off-grid." They looked at her, not with curiosity, but recognition, as if she'd finally arrived at the time they'd expected. Silas led her inside. Wood floors, high ceilings, walls painted in calming earth tones. She passed shelves of labeled jars, a fireplace surrounded by mismatched chairs, a corkboard pinned with hand-drawn maps and schedules. Everything felt lived in, purposeful. This way, they exited through the rear and followed a gravel path to a smaller cabin, tucked behind a stand of birch trees. The porch sagged slightly in the middle. A wind chime made of old spoons tinkled against the breeze. "This one's yours," Silas said. "He built it when you were 10. Never told anyone why." Mara's jaw tightened. "He left me a coin and a shack." "Perfect. He left you part of the only place he trusted and the only person he trusted with it." The screen door rasped as she pushed it open. Inside waited a narrow bed, a leaning bookshelf, and a desk layered in dust. Pale pine walls stood bare, no curtains, nothing soft to hide behind. Silas lingered at the threshold, voice dropping. He thought the world would try to press you small. This was his way of giving you room to breathe again. The interior carried a stillness she couldn't name. Not peace exactly, but a silence that pressed close, as if listening. Her bag thudded onto the floor. She brushed the desk's edge. The wood smelled faintly of tobacco mixed with cedar oil. Outside, a crow settled on the railing, blinking once before it lifted away. Beyond, the turbine's blades turned in slow rhythm against the sky. Her hand closed around the silver dollar in her pocket. The initials glinted across her palm when a door hinge moaned behind her, stretching open with deliberate weight. Mara spun, pulse racing, but the doorway framed only moving air and branches shifting in the wind. She stepped out, scanning the woods. Stillness held. The breeze tugged at her coat hem, then slipped away, leaving the hush intact. Sliding the sealed envelope into her pocket, she moved down the steps, boots striking unevenly against the wood. Farther uphill, a cabin emerged, half hidden among firs. Paint peeled, railing warped, but the lock shone bright. She twisted the knob, expecting resistance. It gave way too easily. Inside, dust thickened the air, edged with the faint trace of cedar. A large map stretched across one wall, pushpins scattered across its surface. Elias's handwriting crawled along the margins in black ink. On the desk beside a fountain pen, a stack of yellowing folders waited. She skimmed the first maintenance reports, solar checks, water flow records, all routine. The bottom drawer stuck. She jerked it harder. A dull thunk. Behind a pile of journals wedged tight lay a folder without a label, held by a tarnished clip. Her pulse quickened as she slid it free. The first page was handwritten, block letters sharp and deliberate. Asset Tier Protocol, Stage 3 Lockdown. Below, a flowchart mapped out a sequence of actions: audit, reclassification, secure zone establishment. On the second page, land coordinates were drawn in blue ink, some circled multiple times. At the bottom, a short list of flagged corporate entities. One name stood out, underlined 3 times in red: Vex Corp. She stared at it for a full minute. A knot tightened behind her ribs. Footsteps crunched on the path. She shoved the folder back in the drawer just as a knock landed on the doorframe. June leaned in, hair windblown, eyes steady. "I figured you'd find your way up here." Mara stepped aside. "What do you know about Vex Corp?" she asked before June could sit. "Enough," June replied. "They've been circling these ridges for years. Sent feelers to the community council, offered sustainability grants, which is code for trying to buy influence. Mining lithium. These mountains sit on top of a rare deposit. Deep core, not easy to reach. Expensive, but not impossible, especially for someone like your cousin." Mara folded her arms. "Dorian." June's gaze didn't waver. "He was here once years ago. Smiled a lot, asked polite questions, left with more than he came for." Mara's stomach turned. "Why didn't my grandfather go public?" "I think he didn't trust that the public would care, or that the courts would protect the land from the people trying to own it." Silence filled the room, like water rising. She glanced again toward the drawer, the weight of the folder pressing behind her eyes. A little before noon, Lyle waved her over near the edge of the meadow. He wore a headlamp and fingerless gloves, his sleeves rolled and smeared with grease. Time for the nickel tour. They hiked down a narrow path to the edge of the valley, where a dam curved across the river like a blunt spine. The power station beside it looked more like a tool shed than a control hub until he opened the door. Inside, rows of panels blinked green. The hum of turbines vibrated underfoot. Everything smelled like clean metal and cold cement. This place powers the entire valley, Lyle said. Hydro plus solar backup. Every cabin, every system. And it can run indefinitely assuming no one messes with it. He tapped a monitor. Here's the weird part. A touchscreen showed system logs, dates, timestamps, water flow rates, but the history only went back 2 weeks. Looks like someone did a full reset, he said. Wiped everything before that. Mara leaned in. Was there a reason? None I can find. Which is exactly the problem. Elias wouldn't have cleared anything unless it was serious, or unless someone else did it without permission. Back in her cabin, dusk stretched golden bands across the window panes. The envelope in her pocket pressed heavier with every breath. She lowered herself at the desk, clicked on the lamp, and cracked the wax seal. Inside waited a single card. Her grandfather's handwriting curved in bold, deliberate strokes. If you're reading this, the inheritance is no longer a secret. Keep it whole until you understand why it had to be hidden. Nothing else. No maps, no instructions, no key. Just that line and the silence that seemed to expand around it. She laid the card flat, fingertips grazing the edges, as if more words might surface. Metal shifted faintly in her coat pocket, the coin brushing against the fabric with a dry clink. By the next morning, she was seated in a cramped notary's office, wedged between a pawn shop and a diner with peeling awnings. The place carried the scent of toner and lemon cleaner, a small fan wheeling pointlessly in the corner. Across the desk, Mara rested her hands on a stack of documents stamped with the Haven seal. Her name appeared neatly at the top beneath the line, Successor Trustee Authorization. She was meant to sign and leave with control, officially hers. But the notary's eyes kept flicking toward the hallway, as if expecting a sudden interruption. Silas stood beside her, arms folded. Is there a problem? The woman, middle-aged, precise to the point of rigidity, adjusted her glasses. This file has a flag. I can't move forward until it's cleared. Mara leaned forward. What kind of flag? Pending investigation, the notary said carefully. It came in this morning. An external claim was filed against the legitimacy of the transfer. Something about ownership lineage. The complaint originated from Vex Corp. A pulse of heat shot up Mara's neck. They're challenging the will. Technically, they're contesting the stewardship, alleging conflict of interest, improper designation, asset mismanagement. It's layered. Silas didn't blink. They'll never win. That may be, the woman said, voice strained. But until it's resolved, I'm legally bound to hold the file. The heat hit harder. Mara yanked the door open with more force than necessary and stepped out into the sidewalk, her boots hitting the pavement. Too fast, too loud. Now they're not even pretending, she muttered. They want you to panic, Silas said. Don't. They've gone legal. That's not panic, that's war. By the time they returned to Haven, the sun had dipped behind the ridgeline. Someone had rung the bell at the community lodge. A meeting was underway. Word traveled fast up here. Inside, a murmur of voices hushed when Mara entered. Lyle stood near the hearth, pointing at a projection of the dam's interface logs. This is the third unscheduled disconnect in 8 days. Each time someone bypassed the default protocols, no alerts, no trace, just silence. Could it be a glitch, someone asked? No, Lyle said firmly. This is someone using manual override. Mara scanned the room. Faces were familiar now, some friendly, others carefully neutral. One woman, arms folded across her chest, didn't bother hiding her glare. This started after she showed up, the woman said. We don't know that, June replied. She shows up and suddenly our power grid's a question mark. Come on, a man near the back added. If this escalates and the state steps in, we lose sovereignty. All of it. June raised a hand, but Mara stepped forward first. I didn't ask to be here, and I didn't ask for this fight. But if you think walking away keeps you safe, you haven't met the people trying to take this place. The silence that followed was thick with hesitation. A voice broke through from the side, clear, young, sharp. She's not wrong. Mara turned. A woman in her 20s, dark curls tied in a loose bun, stood near the windows. She wore hiking boots and a canvas messenger bag slung across her chest. I'm Indira Graves, she said, freelance reporter. I've been living off-grid for the last year. 2 years ago, I published a piece about Vex Corp's illegal drilling tactics in southern Nevada. A week after it went live, my apartment was broken into. Laptop gone. Phone cloned. I got doxxed. I was getting death threats for 3 straight months. Someone exhaled softly near the doorway. They don't just play dirty, Indira continued. They erase opposition. If they know Mara is here, if they think she stands in their way, they're not going to wait around for a court ruling. They'll come for her. And for us, a flicker of unease crossed the room. Why stay, someone asked her. Indira smiled grimly. Because places like this still matter. And they know it. The meeting unraveled in low murmurs, people drifting toward the porch in scattered clusters. Lyle powered down the projector. June offered Mara a brief nod before slipping out with the others. Back in her cabin, she lowered herself onto the edge of the bed phone, gripped tight. At the top of her inbox, one message glared, no subject, no sender. She tapped it open. $5,000, euros and dollars. Transfer control of Haven. Think fast. Clock's already ticking. Her pulse thudded in her wrist as her thumb hovered above the screen. In her coat pocket, the coin scraped faintly its chilled rim, pressing through the fabric while the phone's glow bleached her face. The light faded as the screen dimmed and another glow replaced it, Lyle's monitor stuttering with static-laced footage. He rolled the timeline back, jaw tight, then froze a frame. There, Mara leaned in. The dam's side camera caught a hooded figure crouched by the overflow control box, hand moving quickly with a tool. A flash of metal, then the silhouette turned and vanished into darkness. That was recorded the night you arrived, Lyle said, arms locked across his chest. Her eyes snapped to the timestamp, jaw tightening. What were they doing? Testing a false override. The flow stayed steady, but the log shows someone forcing an entry. They didn't want to break it, just leave a weakness. Why to suggest instability? Indira answered, her laptop balanced on her knees. That's the excuse regulators need. Haven gets evacuated under the guise of safety. Mara paced a narrow track across the floor, and Vex Corp sweeps in to salvage it. They've done worse, Indira said. This is cleaner. Mara halted. Do we know who that was? Lyle shook his head. The camera caught movement, nothing clear. Motion sensors were bypassed. She raked her fingers through unbrushed hair, tugging at the knots. Why now, she whispered. Why wait years and strike the week I appear? Indira closed her laptop slowly. Because it's not just about Haven anymore. It's about you. By late afternoon, the kitchen brimmed with clatter and low voices. Mara dried dishes with a threadbare towel, while the smells of stew, cornbread, and wood smoke mingled around her. Children shuffled past, carrying cups. Laughter carried from the far end of the table. For a moment, the space almost felt like a home, not a target. A hand touched her shoulder. Silas. She followed him across the gravel path to his cabin. The room inside glowed dimly under 2 oil lamps and a strip of skylight. Shelves brimmed with manuals, law reviews, geology reports. From a drawer, he drew a thick black folder strapped with elastic. I shouldn't show you this, he said, though he passed it over. Mara spread it on the desk. Satellite images, thermal scans, survey notes, map after map, each circling a dense lithium vein, Haven sitting dead center. Surrounding plots were already stamped with corporate tags. The Vex Corp emblem appeared again and again. Elias knew, Silas said. He saw what they were moving toward. That's why he hid everything legally, geographically, even from the community. He didn't want to weaponize it, she whispered. No. But now you're in his place. They know it, and they know you're the last obstacle. Mara looked up from the map, eyes hollow. So I have 2 choices. I go public, and they bury this place under lawsuits and media noise, or I stay quiet and wait for them to sabotage us again. He didn't answer. She wrapped the folder again and held it tight to her chest. That night, sleep didn't come. The air in the cabin felt too thin. Her thoughts wouldn't stay still, they spiraled. Every shadow on the wall looked like movement. Every creak outside was footsteps. Sometime after midnight, her phone buzzed. Incoming video call. Calla. She blinked, heart lurching. She answered. The screen lit up with her daughter's sleepy face lit by a nightlight shaped like a fox. Her curls were flattened on one side. One front tooth was missing. Hi, Mommy, Calla whispered. Mara smiled before she could stop herself. Hi, baby. You're in the woods, I am. Are there fireflies? Lots. They blink like little stars. Calla smiled. Then her expression changed. Daddy said you're fighting again. Mara's breath caught. We're sorting things out. Her daughter looked down. Are you safe? Mara didn't respond right away. The pause stretched between them miles long. Her eyes prickled. Calla asked again, softer. You are right, I'm trying to be, Mara said quietly. Calla tilted her head. Are you going to come home soon? Mara swallowed. Not yet. But I'm with good people. The girl nodded, not fully understanding, then yawned. Okay, don't forget my drawing. The one with the owls. I won't, Mara whispered. The screen dimmed to black. She stayed on the floor knees, braced among scattered maps and folders, the coin catching a faint gleam before slipping from her grip with a dull clink. Thunder rolled over the ridge as night pressed against the glass. By morning, rain hammered the roof in sheets, mud slicked the footpaths, and rivulets carved fresh lines down the hill behind the community center. When she stepped beneath the south overhang, with the others' ponchos dripping and voices tight, the tension in the air cut sharper than the rain. She needs to explain, someone demanded. Mara's fingers clenched around the damp folder. That email wasn't from me, she said. I didn't ask for a buyout. But you read it, another voice shot back. Did you answer no? She wouldn't do that, Indira cut in, stepping forward. You really think she'd stand here in the mud if she planned to sell us out? Silence hung heavy. She has a child, someone muttered. You don't know what you'd do with a kid in danger. Mara's throat drew tight, boots sinking deeper into the softened ground. I'm not the one threatening this place, she said. But if you keep turning on each other, you'll miss what's happening outside. Lyle appeared at a run water, streaking his windbreaker. You need to see this. Inside the control cabin, red warnings scrolled across the interface. Water level 91% gate response. Offline error code. 18 or... He swiped a condensation from the monitor. The system never engaged. The automatic release should have triggered hours ago. Mara fixed on the numbers. What if it fails completely? He only passed her a tablet loaded with diagnostics. The override's jammed, either locked on purpose or corrupted. Can we force it open? With the right sequence, yes. If we misstep, we kill the failsafe. Another crack of thunder rumbled across the valley wind, snapping colder as the rain shifted course. Back in her cabin, Mara stripped off the dripping jacket and let it slump onto the floorboards. Her fingers trembled as she drew the diorama box from the drawer, a small wooden model, edges dulled with age and dust. She opened the hinged lid, setting it on the desk, then reached for the will once more. The handwritten addendum was tucked inside a folded envelope, one she hadn't noticed before. The passcode isn't in the vault. It lives in the memory of two people. One is you. The other is the one who knows how to be silent. Her eyes scanned the lines twice, then a third time, the meaning sinking slow and heavy. The diorama. It had been a game one summer she and Elias built the miniature together cabins, circling a cardboard valley, the dam marked by a strip of blue ribbon. Do you remember the date we finished this? He'd asked back then. She had penciled it under the base. Now she turned it over. August 14, 1997. Her pulse kicked. She bolted downhill, boots slipping in the mud, lungs burning, as lightning forked above and wind tore through the ridge. Inside the control cabin, Lyle was already at the console. Backup ports ready. We've got one chance. Mara keyed in the date, 08/2/1497. The panel unlocked with a dull chime. Manual override active, the system intoned. Lyle hauled the crank. Machinery shrieked, walls shuddering until the gates wrenched open. A roar followed the flood, bursting free water, slamming through the spillway like breath ripped from a chest. They froze, listening to the turbines settle as emergency lights flickered low. Lyle crouched by the base plate and tugged loose a strip of industrial wire, edges clipped sharp. This wasn't here yesterday, he said, voice flat. His gaze cut toward Mara. Somebody planned for the gate to jam. The wire clattered against the console, the monitor above them, already breaking into static. Lines of distortion scarred the feed. Lyle muttered a curse, leaning in. Third gap this week. Same camera. Indira slid into the chair, fingers flying. No signal loss. This isn't malfunction. Someone scrubbed the footage. The timeline skipped in uneven jerks. Mara's hands dampened as her gaze shifted to the external drive on the desk. Try Thane's drone files, she said. He's flown it over the dam every day. Does it even record? Indira asked. He rigged it himself, claimed he'd catch me stealing cookies. Lyle gave a dry snort. Your kid might save us. Clip after clip loaded. On the fifth movement, flared at the edge. Stop it, Mara ordered. Lyle froze the frame. Indira zoomed. 3 men crouched at the western gate, one with bolt cutters, another at a utility box, the third prying open the release panel. Zoom closer, Mara said, finger stabbing the screen. The filter sharpened. The kneeling man's jacket bore a faint logo, washed out but recognizable. Vex Corp. Mara's stomach lurched. Call Silas. She stepped outside, pacing the narrow path as drizzle drifted through the pines, needles dripping in steady taps. Silas answered on the second ringtone clipped. Talk. She sent the still frame. Is this him? A pause stretched thin. Then Nolan Drexler, project coordinator for Dorian Vexley. You're certain I drafted his contract? Her jaw set. She ended the call without another word. Back inside, she captured the clearest still from the video, embedded it in an email, and typed a short message. Subject urgent, breach confirmation. Graham, we have visual proof. Please advise. ML. She hit send. 10 minutes later, her phone rang again. Graham, she answered. His voice was crisp but electric with restrained adrenaline. This is actionable. We've got date stamps, geolocation, and identification. Enough for probable cause. If we time it right, we can trigger a federal injunction as soon as I speak to the DOJ contact. But listen to me, don't leak it yet. Let them sweat. Wait for the right crack in their story. One leak too early and they'll claim forgery. Mara exhaled slowly. Understood. After he hung up, she didn't move for a while. The silence in the tech cabin was deep, broken only by the faint hum of the hard drive. Outside, the rain had stopped altogether. The first notification vibrated softly in her coat pocket. She pulled out the phone. Clay. Her thumb hovered. Then she tapped accept. A beat of static, then his voice rougher than usual and quieter. Mara. She said nothing. I saw the story. The dam. Haven. You're really there. She waited. I think I might have been wrong, he said, almost choking on the words. I've been reading. The kids, they keep asking when you'll come back. I didn't know it'd get this bad. Her fingers curled tightly around the phone. I need to see you, he continued. Not for court, not for anything official. Just me. You. Maybe talk. I don't know, she said slowly. Please, he said. For them. For me too. A pause stretched wind threading through the trees like breath held too long, where she asked before she could stop herself. Clay let out a rough sigh. Tomorrow, the diner on Highway 9, 9 o'clock. She gave no reply. He didn't press. The call clicked off. Mara lingered in the doorway, phone still warm in her palm mist curling over the ridge. From the road below came a low hum, insistent, pulling her toward morning. That hum sharpened into the hiss of the cafe's espresso machine. Rain spattered against the glass, each drop streaking like a fingerprint. Clay sat near the back, knotting a napkin between his hands, shoulders tight. Mara crossed straight to him, pulled out the chair opposite, and sat. He lifted his head. Thanks for coming. She met his gaze without answering. I owe you an apology. His words dragged heavy, a real one. She waited. He drew in a measured breath, as if bracing himself. Dorian approached me before the custody trial, offered to cover my legal bills more if I agreed to cooperate. He dressed it up as family duty, preserving the estate. Her fingertip tapped once on the table. So you sold me out. His posture sagged. I thought I could take the money and still stay fair. But the case was already tilted, and I let it tilt further. Her jaw locked. Acid rose in her throat. You let them call me unfit in front of my children. I know, he swallowed. But I can set part of it right. If you move legally against him, I'll testify. Under oath. The waitress slid 2 black coffees onto the table and slipped away without breaking the tension. Mara dipped her chin, not forgiveness, but recognition. By afternoon, the town hall buzzed with charged energy. More people than expected crowded the chamber. Officials lined the dais, reporters adjusting tripods. At the center, Dorian Vexley stood in a navy suit cut sharp as armor, smile polished for cameras. Silas bent toward Mara as they entered. Graham's got the injunction ready. Once the judge acknowledges the video we file. The session opened with citations of tampering at the Haven Dam and questions over land rights. Dorian spoke first, smooth as glass. A coincidence, he said. We support development, but not at the expense of safety. The footage, regrettable, but easily fabricated. No timestamp, no proof it ties to my board. Mara rose. Her words sliced the room. Then verify it now. She connected the laptop. The projector hummed. The video filled the screen. Drone footage, 3 men crouched at the dam. Timestamp clear. GPS coordinates overlaid. A jacket close-up Vex Corp's faded logo undeniable. Keystrokes halted. Reporters froze. The chamber stilled. Graham stepped beside her. This evidence qualifies for federal review. We request injunction against Vex Corp's operations and protection for Haven's residents. Agreement rippled through the audience. Cameras flashed. Dorian's smile faltered. You think this ruins me? His tone, calm eyes on Mara. One drone clip and sentiment. The system swallows stories like yours whole. I don't need to win. I just need you to run out of ground. You sabotaged infrastructure, Mara replied evenly. Risk lives. Tried to erase me as you erased Elias. His veneer cracked. That old man played king too long. I'm simply preparing for what's next. Then be ready for Discovery Silas cut in, because this is live streamed, including your words just now. Dorian pivoted slowly, eyes narrowing at the red camera lights and lifted phones. Reporters whispered, fingers flying. Graham raised his own phone. Confirmations in. Federal investigators arrived by morning. The courtroom smelled faintly of varnish and coffee gone cold. Fluorescent lights hummed above, casting a pale wash across the long oak bench, where the judge sat expressionless. Mara's heart pounded beneath her blazer as she took her place beside Graham. Across the aisle, Clay stood in the witness box, fingers interlaced, tone steadier than she'd braced for. Yes, I took help from Dorian Vexley money advice. He told me it was best for the children, that Mara's world was unstable. I see now it was manipulation, and I regret it. The judge made a note without raising his head. Clay's throat tightened, but he pushed on. Since then, I've watched what she's created at Haven. A foundation, a home, a place our kids could grow. I support joint custody, and I trust her. Mara glanced up. In his expression lay guilt, but also something firmer, an honesty that felt closer to real than anything he'd shown before. Her turn followed. She spoke of Haven, how she organized housing, coordinated crops, balanced budgets. My income is consistent, she told them. Each child has their own bed, their own corner. On-site classes, a pediatric nurse, tutors rotating weekly. They'd have more than shelter. They'd have a community. The judge rested his chin on steepled fingers, silent. Evidence followed: photos of cabins, the schoolhouse, Silas's financial reports, and Indira's written account of threats, paired with federal proof of sabotage. Halfway through, a clerk stepped in, sliding a sealed envelope across the bench. The judge scanned its contents and finally raised his gaze. Ms. Langley, are you aware of the countersuit filed this morning by Mr. Dorian Vexley? Mara's eyes shifted to Graham. He gave a short nod. Yes, Your Honor. It alleges defamation and unlawful interference. The judge tapped the letter once. The Department of Justice has accepted formal investigation into Mr. Vexley and Vex Corp. His claim is suspended pending outcome. Graham rose smoothly. Additionally, we've lodged federal charges: infrastructure sabotage, attempted land seizure, judicial tampering. The judge's focus settled back on Mara. Custody will be reassessed in 6 months. As of today, joint custody is reinstated conditional on continued housing stability and steady income. Her grip tightened against the table's edge, balance tipping for an instant. Clay gave a faint nod across the room, neither triumph nor malice, just acknowledgement. They exited swiftly. Cameras burst like fireworks outside, but Mara lowered her head, brushing Graham's sleeve as they pressed through the crowd. The marble steps seemed to stretch endlessly under her boots. Back in Graham's office, the atmosphere shifted to precision. Assistants sorted files. Silas bent over documents, glasses sliding down his nose. Graham passed Mara the stamped folder. Official sealed. You carried it through, he told her, his words low but weighty. But it wasn't until they arrived at the federal clerk's desk that the shift felt real. Mara handed over the file herself. watched it get scanned, registered, time-stamped. "It's official now," Silas murmured. She nodded, hands trembling, as she turned to leave. No more shadows. Back at the town hall, a final motion was being read aloud. The restraining order against Dorian Vexley was being enacted, effective immediately. He stood near the edge of the room, lips drawn into a bloodless line, arms crossed over his chest. A cluster of legal aides surrounded him, murmuring quietly. But his stare found Mara. She held it. "You're banned from all Haven properties until the investigation concludes," the official read aloud. "Any attempt to contact residents or interfere with the land will be considered a violation of federal order." Dorian didn't argue. He turned jaw rigid and strode toward the exit. As the heavy doors swung shut behind him, someone in the back let out a breath loud enough to echo. The sky cleared sharper than it had in days. Rain still clung to the courthouse steps, flashing pale light as it drained away. Mara lingered at the landing fingertips, brushing her coat pocket where the coin Elias left her, pressed cool and steady. At Haven, morning spread bright over the ridge, turning wet soil into ribbons of gold. The scent of rain lingered, but the storm was gone. From the overlook, she watched the cabins stir the valley, humming back into rhythm. Near the lodge, children hunched over folding tables, scattered with wires and tiny boards. Lyle crouched at Thane's side, guiding him through the circuit. Goggles too big for his face slid down as he grinned wide. Calla darted across the grass barefoot, a paper windmill spinning in her hand, her laughter slicing through the damp air. For once, the quiet around them felt solid. Silas came up the path with a manila folder. "Feds raided Vex Corp at sunrise," he said. "Servers, hard drives, half their staff." Her shoulders eased. Any word from the judge, he passed the file across. "Emergency grant cleared $350 an honor for housing and education. Indira's piece is everywhere." She titled it, "One Coin Against a Kingdom." "You're named." Mara skimmed the seal, her hand resting against the page longer than she meant to. "All of it." "Only the flattering parts," he said dryly. "She skipped the bits about your second-guessing." A small laugh slipped out. She tucked the folder under her arm. Across the slope, June lifted a thermos in greeting. Seedlings lined the medical hut's sill. Each detail of life returned with deliberate weight. By midday, Indira's footage rolled on national channel sabotage frames, family testimonies a slow zoom on the silver coin in Mara's hands. Commentators asked if Haven might become the model for ethical land trusts. Silas muttered, "Give Washington 2 hours and they'll draft a subcommittee." Meanwhile, in Asheville, Dorian Vexley sat in federal holding. Bail denied. New charges stacked: wire fraud, bribery, obstruction. In his drawer, investigators found illegal contracts and a note with Clay's name circled twice. At Graham's office, phones rang nonstop. Buyout offers, partnership pitches, franchise proposals, all rejected. Mara moved through the corridor quietly, carrying a small envelope. In the break room, Calla curled on the couch, sketching stars, Thane leaning by the window, with his drone hugged close. She knelt to their level. "You're officially enrolled here now," she said. "An address, your own beds, your own space." Thane's eyes brightened, though his face stayed still. He nodded once. Calla tilted her chin. "So, no more Dad's apartment." "No," Mara whispered. "You'll still visit, but home is here." The girl pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, carrying the smell of crayons and cereal. That night, when the ridge turned copper with sunset, Mara stepped back into her cabin. The coin rested on the sill, initials, worn pale. She turned it slowly in her palm, its weight both anchor and reminder. Voices drifted faintly through the trees, clinking plates, a snatch of laughter, the scrape of a fiddle tuning. She set the coin back down and listened, the air alive with more than wind. The hum grew clearer as Mara stepped into the field, the scent of grilled corn and lilac wrapping around her. Strings of soft lights glowed overhead, casting warmth across folding tables, piled with casseroles, fresh bread, jars of peach preserves, and pitchers of lemonade. A banner rippled above the stage, Spring Rising, Haven's first light festival. She moved between clusters of neighbors, their chatter spilling into the music. 2 teenagers spun barefoot in the grass near a pair of battered speakers, daring each other to keep rhythm. By the dessert table, June balanced a pie and a plate, telling a story that had everyone bent over with laughter. On the far side of the clearing, Calla crouched in a patch of butterfly weed, arranging stones in a circle while Maya tucked petals into her curls. Farther uphill, Thane presided over a table of wires and LED kits, younger kids crowding close. Each time a buzzer sparked to life, they gasped in delight. Lyle lounged nearby with a glass of lemonade, catching Mara's eye with a brief nod. Above them, the sky stretched clear and violet. Near the drink station, Clay stood with Indira. His jacket hung loose tie, half undone expression, softer than she'd seen in years. When their gazes met, he lifted his glass in quiet acknowledgement. She held his look without raising her hand. By the main path, a polished wooden board bore new carving, "Haven, a place you protect, because it protects you." Below it, a shallow groove waited. Mara slipped the silver dollar from her pocket, the same coin that once drew laughter in a courtroom. Its edge dulled initials still catching light. She pressed it into place until the wood gave a muted click. Someone nearby whispered, "All this from one coin." Her mouth curved barely. Sometimes it doesn't take more. Lanterns lifted, then rice paper and twine rising into the sky, golden shapes drifting among stars. The crowd leaned closer to one another as the music swelled. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She stepped out of the glow of the lights to read the screen. From K. Murphy, SolanoWestlaw.org. Subject, Elias Langley Foundation. Transfer notice message. Per the late Elias Langley's directives, our office confirms the authorization of 2 additional Haven projects intended for land parcels in Oregon and New Mexico. All documentation has been prepared for handover. Please advise when you're ready to assume oversight. She read it twice, then once more. Beyond the field, fireflies blinked between the trees. She could hear Calla laughing. Thane's voice explaining circuits. The scent of pine and spice bread hung in the air. Her arms dropped to her sides, phone still in hand, but her body felt oddly lighter. Behind her, someone called her name. She turned. The night wasn't done yet. Some stories begin with a fight for survival and end with a quiet act of rebuilding. Mara's journey wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming a voice, a future, and a space where truth couldn't be buried. In a world where power plays dirty, sometimes one woman, one coin, and one act of courage is enough to turn the tide. If this story moved, you don't forget to subscribe and follow for more emotional stories just like this one.